Hey there, my name is Matt. I'm a solutions architect here at Augment. Today I'll be giving you an overview of our platform, as well as a brief comparison against Cursor. Today I'm looking at a typical day-to-day task for any engineer. Incremental change within a code base. In this case, it looks like adding a field, some kind of confidence score, to a pre-existing data structure in the code base. This code base is a pretty sizable one. It's a monorepo. I can actually take a look at Augment and it will give me an idea that there are about 20,000 files in context here. This is a self-driving car project. So, there's mention of images and scenes and points within an image. And there's obviously a bunch of complexity to this code base, and I'm newer to it, so I don't understand everything going on here. In fact, the opening of this task talks about a block library, and I don't know what a block library is. So let me start out there by asking Cursor, what is a block library? And I have to make sure that I click this optional submission to submit a codebase chat such that the context of the codebase is actually considered in the question. Cursor will take a bit of time to go away and figure out what is the relevant context to answer this question. It scores some files, it looks like, and then it will get around to streaming an answer from the generative model once that's done. So in this case, there's actually a README file in a directory called block, which it looks like Cursor was able to uncover. Pretty rudimentary algorithm should be able to locate that, right? So it's reflecting a lot of that information back to me. There are some weird formatting issues with the snippet there, but I could get a good understanding for what a block library is reading this. Let's take this same question and run it over at Augment. So you'll notice that Augment's chat is much faster, and I didn't do anything special. So we maintain a real-time index of the code base versus a 10-minute delayed index, and our default mode is always on for code base awareness. So there's no option to chat without the code base, right? We think of Augment like a pair programmer. If you're pair programming with someone, you want them to use their knowledge of the code base in every interaction. And this happens in chat, like I'm using here, but also our completions, our instructions, our next edit capability. Any surface of Augment that you touch uses the same context engine and the complete code base awareness to respond. So you can see Augment directly calling out this README. I can actually click through to it if I'd like to read that directly, and also surfaces a lot of the same information that helps me understand what one of these block libraries might be. So at this point, I want to move on to the task at hand. So let me come in and ask a question about that. Actually, I want to ask, where can I find the data structure that I want to edit, right? So the data structure is for an image scene. And I'll explain a little bit about my task. So I'll say I need to add a confidence score to each point. Submit that, and actually let me cancel that. I need to run it with the full codebase context. So we'll sit through the same thing here where we have to wait a little bit for Cursor to figure out what it thinks is relevant here. So again, we come back with a response here. And it's talking about this, let's see, short buffer image RGB. So this is something to do with images. That sounds about right. But I'm not seeing something specifically related to image scenes or points within an image, which is kind of like a key part of this task. So I'm not sure it's found the right thing here. Let's take the question to Augment and see what it finds. So again, you'll see that Augment's response is really quick. And it points me towards this scene Scala file. Immediately, this feels better because I'm asking about an image scene. I'm talking about adding a confidence score to each point. And this really seems to reflect that. So it's showing me the data structure as is, and it's talking about updates to this class. It's also saying that there are like Python bindings that I may need to update, and tests and so on. So let's take the initial update here. So we'll apply this change where we update the data structure. So this looks good. I'm going to accept that. And as I'm looking at this, right, we can actually see that already Augment is kind of making some follow-up suggestions here. So this is our next edit capability. What this is saying is, given you've added confidence here, it looks like you should really add in a confidence field to this follow-up here. So I could actually just drop in and choose to accept that, right? And I'll make that change. So this is just an interesting way that Augment is using codebase understanding as well as my intent to offer follow-up suggestions, and we'll revisit this in a moment. But for now, I'd really like to touch on something quite important to me around the tests, right? Any implementation change, I want to update the tests as well, and Augment is offering help here. So I'm going to say yes for the tests, and we'll see what it comes back with. So it's suggesting that I update this scene update test Scala file. That sounds like it's going to be pretty logical. So there's some changes here to some additional tests. Even wants to create a bunch of new tests for me. All of this looks great. For the purposes of this, let's just apply changes to the existing tests to factor in confidence. This looks good. I'm going to accept this and save these changes. So as we know from the chat, anytime I start to make changes to an implementation, update my tests, there are other plumbing changes I have to do, other knock-on effects. And Augment can predict a lot of this for me. So we can see Augment driving what it thinks the next edit should be in file, but I can also view all of these suggestions within the next edit panel over here. So things like those Python bindings that Augment was talking about updating, I can see all of the suggestions for these updates over here. So no longer do I need to have a long back and forth conversation with chat about the potential next changes. Augment has actually already figured out what it thinks all of those next edits should be, all of those knock-on effects should be. And this is going to allow me to meaningfully move through my task in a way that I just wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And this is really where we see a key difference versus Cursor. Augment's context engine, its understanding of the code base, the way that it can surface the most relevant files for the generative models to use is our key differentiator. Cursor is using some rudimentary algorithms to surface that context and show it to the model. And once you get into these larger code bases, it just can't find the right things. They're using some off-the-shelf solutions for their RAG architecture, and these really fall down. So our secret sauce is in having a retrieval and model mechanism that understands code as code and not just a bunch of text, and it can surface the most relevant things to the model so that you're able to make the edits in the right place. This is all I really wanted to share with you today. Would love to have a conversation and show you a bit more of our platform, but that's all for now. Thanks very much.